Hi, I'm Don Kulick. I'm the author of a book that was recently translated into Polish by Jagiellonian University Press, titled in English, A Death in the Rainforest, How a Language and a Way of Life Came to an End in Papua-New Guinea. I've been asked by my publisher to quickly answer 6 questions that have been posed by various people, and I'd like to do that. The first question comes from Kasper Tekielia, and the question is, what was the hardest part about living in the village that you lived in Papua New Guinea called Gapun? The hardest part was actually living in the rainforest. The rainforest has a lot of hype these days. It's full of fresh flowers, beaming indigenous people, flitting butterflies. It's not like that at all. It's full of mud. It's full of sharp objects. It's full of things that can eat you and poison you and kill you. And so that was hard. The hardest part was, however, the food. And I have a chapter describing the food in the book. The main food that they eat all the time, it's like the Polish version of potatoes, is something called sago, which is like slime. It's like eating slime. That was difficult. That was hard. And as I say, I described that in perhaps a bit too much detail in the book. Another question from Monica Cabala was, what was the biggest surprise for you in your career as an anthropologist? And the answer to that question is, the biggest surprise to me was that people like talking about themselves so much. I see anthropology as being a kind of an unpaid, at least they don't pay me, therapist. I'm interested in people, and I'm interested in asking people about themselves. And what I've discovered is that that is not a difficult thing to do. People enjoy talking about themselves. In fact, I think people like talking about themselves much more than they like talking about anything else. So to have somebody come to you and just like, tell me about yourself, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your life, tell me what you think is important, and really be interested, I think that people love that. And I've worked in a lot of different places. I've never encountered anybody who doesn't like that, who doesn't like that attention. So that's a surprise. That was actually a surprise to me. Another question from Fabrica Belfra is, what word in the tayap language was my favorite word, or the word that I remember most? And the book, I should say, is about a language that is dying. It's a small language that these days is spoken by about 40 people. It was never spoken by more than about 100 and maybe 20 people. And that's very typical for Papua New Guinea. Lots of languages there are spoken by less than 500 people. And there's different explanations for that, which again, I talk about in the book. My favorite kind of talk in Gapun is the swearing. And swearing in Gapun is what women do. It's not like in Western culture where men are the ones who swear. I mean, women swear here too in Western culture, but the ones who are authorized to swear and who swear the most are men, swear publicly are men. In Gapun, it's the opposite. Men are supposed to be very contained and dignified, and they don't swear. They're not supposed to swear. Women are supposed to swear. Women should swear. Women do swear a lot, and they do it mostly in the language that's dying, tayap, which is one of the reasons it's dying, because it's become associated with women. And they love to swear, and they swear poetically. I have a chapter in the book about their poetic swearing. It's very, very poetic. And so my favorite words are actually swear words that I have incorporated into my own swearing, partly because nobody else understands them, but they're great words, and there's some wonderful examples, I think, in the book. Another question is that, do the villagers, this one is from Maria Skibinska, do the villagers, are they aware that they live in a kind of an enclave? I mean, they're aware that they are living on the periphery of something that they really don't understand. And much of this book is about their understanding of the West, their understanding of white people. So the book is really about how we have impacted on people very far away from us that, we frankly don't care about, but they care a lot about us. They care a lot about us partly because the West has, for all intents and purposes, destroyed everything that they had before and given them very little in return. And they think a lot about that. So in a sense, they're aware that they're not part of this complex that has led to the destruction of their ways of life, but they want to be a part of it. So they don't see themselves as an enclave. They see themselves as a part of a larger network, a larger community that they want to join, but we're not inviting them. And that's what a lot of the book is about. That's the bearing theme of the book. Another question from Ursula Gala is, are the villagers aware that their language is very precious? It's a very precious element of their culture that they should foster. The answer to that question is no, they're not. It's their language. They speak it. They don't accord it any special reverence. And in fact, one of the arguments in the book is that the Western idea that people share a language is not a kind of an idea that the villagers have. They own their own version of the language. And if other people don't learn the language, like if their kids don't learn it, it's their problem because the older speakers own their version. So this idea of a shared language is not a universal understanding of what language is and what language means. And the last question is, from Elisa Kubiak, is, do we think that we can identify the pace at which languages are dying? Again, linguists have hypothesized on the basis of the data that they have. They've said that 90% of the languages of the world spoken today will not survive the next 100 years. That's a lot of languages. There are approximately 6,000 different languages spoken in the world today. And linguists, as I say, estimate that 90% of them will be dead in 100 years. Now, the reason that they can say that is because 4% of the languages of the world are spoken by most people. So most people in the world speak English, they speak French, they speak Russian, they speak Chinese, they speak Spanish, they speak these large languages. That means that 96% of the languages of the world are spoken by very few people. They're small languages. And those languages are the ones that are at risk of dying. Now, whether that will happen, who knows? I think that it's clear that a lot of small languages are dying. A lot of these small languages are not documented, which is very tragic for our understanding of the human race. So again, whether or not they will all die is an open question. Things can happen, languages can revitalize. So we don't know, but what we do see is an extinction happening with languages. That is very, very sad. So I hope that has answered those questions. I hope you will, those of you who are interested in places like Papua-New Guinea, interested in the history of colonialism, Christianity, capitalism, will read the book. Those of you who are interested in language and how a language dies, I hope you'll read the book. And I also hope those of you who wonder what it's like for a white person like me, a white guy like me, to just suddenly appear in a place like Papua-New Guinea to write a book about their language. What do they think about that? What's it like for me to live there? That's what the book is about. And I hope that anyone interested in any of those topics will read the book and enjoy it. Thank you.